TV. A very good morning. Join me in the Breakfast Show. Remember, this is the Breakfast Show coming to you live from Pure Africa TV. My name is Evans Odiambo. Remember, today is the 29th of the month of April, of course. The year is 2022. Talking about the 29th of the month of April, remember today is that particular day when the burial ceremony and service, of course, of the late President Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki will be conducted where at the Nyayo Sports Ground. Remember, that particular ceremony or that particular service will begin at exactly 8 o'clock in the AM. Just 1 hour from now, that particular ceremony will be kicking off. And so every member of the public, every leader, every citizen, or of course that who may be willing to attend that particular ceremony is urged to get there before 8 o'clock, because upon that particular time, some of the gates will be closed as the body of the late President Mwai Kibaki will be getting there. Of course, President Uhuru Kenyatta is among the dignitaries who are expected there. Among others, of course, several presidents or several heads of states from other neighboring countries, of course, expected to be there. Of course, among some of them have also confirmed their attendance. Some of them have also confirmed that they'll get to attend that particular ceremony. And so it will kick off exactly at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so that's the schedule for today, especially as far as the mourning and paying of last respect to the fallen President Mwai Kibaki is being concerned. And so that was about the 29th day of the month of April. The year is 2022. Remember, in the first bit of this particular show, we will be interacting. As usual, the Breakfast Show, especially the first bit of it, is interaction. So, be ready to interact. Just to let me know where you are tuned in from, where you are watching from, of course, where you are able to follow this particular show from, and actually through which particular platform are you able to follow this particular show. Of course, the Breakfast Show coming to you live from Pure Africa TV. Pure Africa Radio. Remember, all our social media platforms are already opened. Of course, our fan page, Facebook is Pure Africa TV, Instagram Pure Africa TV, Twitter at Pure Africa TV. Remember, the hashtag is the Breakfast Show. You can as well follow us through our YouTube. Of course, it is Pure Africa TV. Once you get to Pure Africa TV, or get to that particular YouTube channel, remember to subscribe. I tell you, subscribe, you get much more of these particular contents and details coming to you one-on-one from Pure Africa TV. Remember also to get to have your Pure Africa TV official app. That is simply PATV official app. And having that particular application, you'll be at a position of getting all the latest trends and all notification information from Pure Africa TV, and at the same time from Pure Africa Radio. So having that particular application will make you be at a position of even following all your favorite movies and the favorite series, of course, coming to you from Pure Africa TV. And so the first bit of it will be such an interactive bit as usual, but getting to the second bit of this particular show, of course, of the Breakfast Show, remember, we will be looking at some of the top news stories, of course, those that are given weight today, those that are treated significantly. Then we'll get to look at various newspapers, of course, to see what is transpiring and what is unfolding from the various newspapers. Remember, we'll look at various sections and subsections of these particular newspapers, whereby we look at the world of politics, we look at the world of business, we look at in the counties section, just to see the events that are transpiring from our counties levels and sub-county level. And that will be the second bit of the show. But what about the third bit of the show? When we get to the third and the last bit of the show, of course, as usual, it will be such an it will be such a participatory bit. It will be such a participatory session on this particular show, because whereby we'll get to discuss a given subject of study that which is of public interest, of course that particular subject which is perceived to be affecting the whole country, affecting the entire society, community as well. And today, remember, getting to the third bit of the show, of course, we will be talking about that particular subject, which is seen to be, of course, which is seen to be debatable, that particular subject that is seen to be contentious, that which is really seen to debatable. Of course, this will be considering what the minister, what the cabinet minister for interior security, of course, Dr. Fred Matiang'i said yesterday. Remember the sentiments of Dr. Fred Matiang'i yesterday, that beginning next month, the petty offenders will be released from the jails. Remember that those inmates who are blocked behind the bars, but they have very petty offenses. But due to the fact that the facility has or there's no enough facility to accommodate all those inmates, there's a program, of course, to begin on next month, whereby some of the petty offenders will be released from the jails. But a question now comes as to whether they will continue to be a threat to the society. But this is a particular issue, this is a particular subject that I'll get your reactions. Of course, I'll be looking forward to getting your reactions, your comments, your views, your opinions about this particular subject. Of course, this was confirmed by Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i, saying that beginning next month, some of the inmates will be released from the jails. Why? Because the facility has no enough space to accommodate all those inmates. Of course, the targeted number is 5,000. Approximately 5,000 petty offenders will be released. But now a question comes as to whether these people would continue to be a threat to the society. Remember, some of them were jailed as thieves, or some of them were jailed as with various offenses. Of course, we'll get to talk about that when we get to the third bit of the show, whereby you'll be telling me, whereby you'll be letting me know your reaction, your comment, your opinion as far as that particular issue is being concerned. You tell me if you feel that it is good some of the petty offenders be released because of insufficient space in that particular facility, or whether they should continue to be held behind the bars. Remember, that's what we'll be talking about when we get to the third bit of the show. And so, as you realize that our first bit of the show, the bit of interaction, second bit, of course, also scheduled, the third bit as well scheduled. And so, do not miss all the three bits of this particular show. This is the breakfast show coming to you live from Pure Africa TV, Pure Africa Radio. My name is Evans Odhiambo. Remember to follow us in all our social media platforms. Of course, are you watching or you following this particular show through your television screen? Remember, you getting us through the free to air satellite decoders. You can as well participate during this particular time as well by dropping your comments through our WhatsApp number. Of course, the number is 0796840560. There we'll be together. Of course, I'll be getting your comment in the real time and shouting it out in the real time, especially during the first bit of the show, such an interactive bit of the show. Remember, you following through our Pure Africa TV official app, you can as well drop your comment in the comment section. The app, of course, that particular platform is designed in a way that there's a comment section there. You can as well drop your comments in that particular section of the comments. I'll be getting it and I'll be reading it then as we continue with the show. 18 minutes past 7 o'clock in the morning. Join me in the breakfast show, and the breakfast show begins. Show live from Pure Africa TV. My name is Evans Odhiambo. Remember, now we are officially getting to the first beat of the show, and as usual, the first beat of the show is such a particular beat whereby we interact, and of course going by the comment section. Remember, I'll be visiting comment sections for various platforms. Of course, I'll be looking at the comment section for the social media platforms. I'll be looking at the comment section for the Pure Africa TV official app. I'll also be looking at the comment section from our WhatsApp number. Of course, the number is 0796840560. All of these, I'll be getting them in the real time, and of course, I'll be shouting up, especially during the first beat of the show. Looking at social media platforms, of course, Facebook, I see Madam Melody already tuned, saying good morning to you, a very good morning to you. Thank you for choosing Pure Africa TV. Thank you for choosing the breakfast show. And of course, moving forward, I see Antoinette Sweden already tuned in, saying hello. Savannah Ga here. Thank you very much, of course, for choosing the breakfast show. Moving forward, I see Jemasi already following live from home. Thank you very much, of course. Owino Victoria, the oldie boy. The oldie boy is also tuned in all the way from Homa Bay County. Of course, Philip also see you already tuned in. Thank you very much. Protas Nyansera already tuned in all the way from Nairobi City County. Nairobi City County, saying the show is just late. Thank you very much for joining me in the breakfast show. My name is Evans Odhiambo. Remember, get this the first beat of this particular show, but soon getting to the second beat of this particular show, because we'll look at some of the top news stories, those particular stories that are given weight today, and just to brief you on some of the stories that we'll talk about deeply when we get to the second beat of the show. Remember, today is that particular day when the burial ceremony, of course, for the third president of Kenya, of course, the late President Emilio Mwai Kibaki, will be conducted. That particular ceremony will begin exactly at 8 o'clock in the morning, just some minutes from now. And so all members of the public who are looking forward to getting to that particular service, or to attending that particular burial service, are urged to get there before 8 o'clock in the morning, before 8 o'clock, because by 8 o'clock some of the gates will be closed, and what will just remain, only the body will be waited to get there. And so you as a citizen, you as a member of the public who would like to join other members in paying the last respect to the late President Mwai Kibaki, especially during that particular ceremony, that particular burial ceremony that will be conducted today in the Nyayo Sports Ground or Nyayo Stadium. Please get there before 8 o'clock in the morning, lest you be locked out of the gate, lest you be locked out of the gate. But those are some of the stories that we'll be briefing you on, even as we continue moving with this particular show. Of course, we'll be letting you know all everything, even as the event transpires there at the Nyayo Stadium, will be letting you know in time, even as we continue with this particular show. Of course, arrangements are already, of course, things are already moving. Of course, people are already getting to that particular stadium ahead of that state funeral or state funeral service. Remember, President Mwai Kibaki will be accorded a state burial. Will be accorded a state burial. Of course, that will be on Saturday. That is tomorrow, 30th of April 2022. Remember, also there's just a good number of presidents or heads of states from various countries that have already confirmed their arrival. They have confirmed that they'll join Kenyans. They'll join Kenyans in paying the last respect to the late President Mwai Kibaki. Of course, among those particular individuals, or among those particular heads of states that have actually confirmed that they will be joining in the last services, or in that particular service at Nyayo Stadium, are Cyril Ramaphosa, of course, from South Africa. That's the head of state of South Africa, or the president of South Africa. Then another head of state is Salva Kiir, of course, South Sudan, and Zendi of Ethiopia. Remember, those are among the heads of states from other countries that have confirmed that they'll get to join. Kenyans in paying the last respect to the late President Mwai Kibaki in that particular event. Of course, today, when the funeral service will be conducted there at Nyayo Stadium. Remember, you can get for yourself, or you can find for yourself the condolences books wherever you are. Remember, they are distributed in all government facilities, or in all government offices, at county levels. You can get there, of course, and get the condolence book as you also pay your last respect to the late President Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki. Those are some of the stories that we'll be talking about when we get to the second bit of the show shortly. Remember also the issue of transport activities. Transport activities be disrupted in the Mombasa Road, Uhuru and Kenyatta Avenue, respectively, ahead of Kibaki's funeral service, of course, at Nyayo Stadium. Remember, some of the roads will be reserved for the dignitaries that will be joining in that particular service, and so other citizens trying to travel, especially using those particular highways and those particular roads, then their activities are likely to become to a standstill until that particular time that all the dignitaries shall get time, or shall be allowed into that particular service. Remember, those are some of the stories that we'll be talking about deeply soon, when as we get to the second bit of the show. Of course, remember also the issue of petroleum is also mentioned, especially as far as the top news stories today in the breakfast show is being concerned. See, now the big petroleum companies to begin to sell petrol to smaller petroleum companies. Of course, this is done in an effort to counteract the fuel shortage that is likely to be seen yet again. Remember, there was that particular first crisis, or the first fuel crisis. But going by the current activities, going by the current situation, you realize that another crisis is likely to come. But as a way of curbing this crisis even before it is out, the bigger petroleum companies have decided to sell large amounts of petrol or large amount of fuel to smaller petroleum company, just in an effort to counteract the shortage of fuel in the country, especially during this long holiday, especially during this long holiday. Then the issue of the petty offenders also mentioned. Of course, we'll get to talk about it soon when we get to the second bit of this particular show. But remember, getting to the third bit of the show, of course, just to remind you once again, but I'll be looking forward to getting your comments, your issues, your viewpoints on this particular opinion or on this particular move, of course, by the Cabinet Secretary for Interior Security Affairs, that is Dr. Fred Matiang'i, saying that beginning next month, petty offenders will be released from jail. Petty offenders will be released from jail. Of course, those inmates that are being locked inside there, yet they had very petty offenses. Do you feel it is a good move, or do you feel that it's a time that they continue not to eat beans behind the bars? Of course, this was confirmed by Dr. Fred Matiang'i that approximately 5,000 in number, approximately a total of 5,000 shall be released from the jails. Of course, due to the fact that the facility has no enough room for accommodating all these inmates, especially considering that some of them are very petty offenses. Realize somebody was jailed as a result of parking in a space that he or she was not supposed to be parking his vehicle in. Then as a result of due to lack of even as little as 600 Kenya shillings to be released from the jail, then you realize that this particular individual continues to serve continues to be there to look forward to ending or look forward to coming to an end of his jail terms just because of 600 Kenya shillings. So such are the individuals that will be released. Of course, the program is to begin on next month. That was made by Dr. Fred Matiang'i, of course, the Cabinet Ministry or the Cabinet Secretary for Interior. But what do you feel about this particular move? Do you feel it's the best move, or do you feel otherwise? Remember, those are some of what we'll be talking about when we get to the third bit of the show. Of course, you'll be dropping your comments there. Remember, the third bit of the show shall be the most participatory bit of the show. That'll be the most participatory bit of the show. Right now, I'm gonna take a very short break. Coming later, we'll be getting officially to the second bit of the show. But before that, just allow me to remind you to follow us in all our social media platforms. Of course, our fan page, Facebook is Pure Africa TV, Instagram Pure Africa TV, YouTube is Pure Africa TV. Remember, you can as well tweet. And of course, hashtag is the Breakfast Show. Twitter at Pure Africa TV, hashtag Breakfast Show. I'll be getting your comments, I'll be getting your tweets. Remember, you can as well drop your comments via WhatsApp number. The number is 0796840560. You following through our Pure Africa TV official app as well. You can get to drop your comment in that particular comment section. Of course, all these particular comments, I'll be gathering them, and of course, I'll be reading some of the comments when we get to the third bit of the show, as we will be discussing on that particular significant matter. My name is Evans Odhiambo, taking a very short break. Continue staying with me. I'll be back with much more even as we get to the second bit of the show. Stay tuned. live from Pure Africa TV, Pure Africa Radio. My name is Evans Odhiambo. Remember, now we are getting direct to some of the top news stories. Of course, those that are given a lot of weight today, those that are given a lot of emphasis today, of course, during this particular show. Topping, we see that transport activities be disrupted in Mombasa Road, Uhuru Avenue and Kenyatta Avenue, of course, ahead of the late President Mwai Kibaki's funeral service, of course, at Nyayo Stadium. Remember, those particular highways and the roads are to be reserved for some of the dignitaries that will be getting to that particular location ahead of that particular service, of course, even as the country will be paying the last respect to the late President Mwai Kibaki. Remember, President Mwai Kibaki was the third President of the Republic of Kenya. And you realize that that particular service is to begin at exactly 8 a.m. The service is to begin at exactly 8 a.m. Of course, this was confirmed by the Interior Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, who as well as all the members of public who would be looking forward to joining the country in that particular service, of course, to get there before 8 o'clock in the a.m. because getting there later than that particular time, then some of the gates will be closed, as of course only the body will be weighted to get to that particular scene, or to get to that particular location ahead of that big service. Of course, the national service. Remember, President Mwai Kibaki will be paid, or will be accorded national burial, will be accorded a national burial ceremony. Of course, the public are urged to get there earlier. Then again, we see that some of the heads of states of various countries have also confirmed that they'll be attending that particular service today. Some of the heads of the states of various states, or heads of various states, have also confirmed that they'll soon arrive and to attend that particular service. Of course, among them we see Cyril Ramaphosa. Of course, that's the head of state for South Africa. Then we see Salva Kiir, of course, of South Sudan. And again, we see Zeni of Ethiopia. All these are among some of the heads of states that have confirmed that they'll finally get to attend that particular service. Of course, other dignitaries from our neighboring country, Tanzania, are also expected to attend that particular service, or that particular ceremony, among many other dignitaries that will be attending that particular ceremony. Meanwhile, the emphasis is on time. That is on time factor, that you as a member of the public would like to attend, get there in time before 8 o'clock in the morning. Of course, going by what is happening currently, we see members of the public already getting to that particular scene, of course, ahead of this state service being accorded to the late President Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki. And going by that, of course, remember the burial programs continue as Kibaki's burial service is conducted at Nyayo Stadium. This is to be conducted today, beginning at exactly 8 o'clock in the a.m. Just some minutes, around 20 minutes from now, the service will be continuing. Just around 20 minutes from now, the service will be continuing. And so members of the public are getting to that particular scene, or to that particular stadium. Remember, this entire service will be led by the Kenya Defence Forces, as earlier confirmed by Dr. Fred Matiang'i, who is the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, or the Interior Cabinet Secretary. Dr. Fred Matiang'i had confirmed that these all services to be led by the KDF, Kenya Defense Forces. Of course, they have their rules, they have their guidelines, of course, they have their schedules as to how they'll be planning this particular event. And so that's why the urge is on the time factor. And so you realize that the public or the other members of the state will be will agree with whatever direction or whatever directive that will be given by the KDF. Then remember, later the body will be transported to Othaya, of course, to Proved Stadium, stadium on Saturday, of course, that is tomorrow, whereby the body will be transported ahead of the burial, or ahead of the burial, even as the last service will be done at the Proved Stadium. Then the body will be laid to rest, of course, tomorrow. Remember, the condolences books are available in state offices, of course, in various counties, and so you can get to the nearest state office in your county and get the burial book, of course, as well. You join the country in paying the last respect for the late President Mwai Kibaki, President Mwai Kibaki. Then again, also worth noting is that only 5,000 guests are expected at the Proved Stadium. Only 5,000 guests will be expected tomorrow at the Proved Stadium. This is that particular stadium in Othaya, home, of course, of the late President Mwai Kibaki, where the very last funeral services will take place, and then later the body will be laid to rest. During that particular time, or in that particular ground, of course, the Proved Stadium, only 5,000 guests will be expected. Of course, among them is the President of Kenya, President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, among other dignitaries, but not exceeding 5,000. Of course, that's a big directive that was also given by the Interior Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, Dr. Fred Matiang'i. And moving forward to the next story, of course, some of the activities and events that are likely to unfold in that particular stadium. Of course, we will be briefing you, of course, to let you know whatever shall transpire in that particular service. Of course, the state service, just in paying the last honors and paying the last respect for the late President Mwai Kibaki. Of course, all these events will be letting you know in time. We'll be letting you know in the real time, even as they unfold. We'll be letting you know in the real time. And let's now switch gears, look at the next story. Of course, aside from the late President Mwai Kibaki's funeral ceremony. Now realize, moving forward to the next story, of course, big petroleum products, or big petroleum companies are now to begin to sell petrol to smaller petroleum companies. Of course, this is done in an effort to counteract fuel shortage that was seen to be looming, especially during this long holiday. Remember, we had the first fuel crisis, of course, that which saw the transport sector interrupted significantly. At the same time, we saw business sector also interfered with or interrupted. Of course, it also saw the prices of various commodities, foodstuffs, and other commodities significantly rise. That was the first crisis. But again, the second crisis was seen looming. But of course, there are just efforts that have been put in place just to counteract the fuel shortage that was likely to be seen, especially during this long holiday. Of course, one major step made to counteract this is that big petroleum companies now to begin to sell petrol to smaller petroleum companies. Remember, this is just coming after the allegations of selling fuel to neighboring companies. Of course, these were some of the allegations that some of the big petroleum companies in Kenya are now selling fuel or selling petroleum products to the neighboring countries, because looking at it, especially during the first fuel crisis, you realize that the crisis was only in Kenya. And so there were questions: why not in Tanzania? Why not in the neighboring Sudan? Why not in Uganda? So it's so the allegations that these other big petroleum companies in Kenya were selling to the outside countries, of course, because they were selling lucratively, or they were getting big amounts of money as compared to selling internally within the country. And of course, this will be a big move, as the bigger companies will be selling to smaller companies, so that the fuel or the petroleum products can be distributed across the country, and that will significantly counteract this looming shortage. That's a story that is also given way today on, of course, moving forward to the next story. This mostly we'll be talking about it when we get to the third bit of the show, because we see petty offenders to be released from jail. CS Fred Matiang'i, petty offenders to be released from jail. Of course, this was declared by Dr. Fred Matiang'i, of course, yesterday, saying that that particular move has been taken because there's no adequate space, or there's no enough space to accommodate all those numerous inmates. And so, as an effort to free up some space, some of the petty offenders will be released. Of course, that particular program is to begin as from next month. That is according to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, said that that is a move taken to free up some space. Of course, that considering that the facilities have no enough space to accommodate the bigger number of the inmates. Of course, approximately 5,000 inmates shall be released, or 5,000 petty offenders shall be released as far as that is concerned. Of course, realize that there are those who stay for failing to give as low as 600 Kenya shillings as a fine. So somebody is held behind the bars just because he is not able to pay his fine, or a fine of 600 shillings. So such individuals are the one to be released beginning next month, just to create some space within the facility. Of course, talking about this, Dr. Matiang'i said that government has no enough facility to accommodate all that big number of inmates, and so leading to that particular move to be taken, of course, as declared yesterday by Dr. Fred Matiang'i, of course, the Interior Cabinet Secretary. Remember, we will be collecting, or I'll be collecting, your viewpoints, your opinions, your ideas on this particular move. What do you feel, or what do you think about this particular move? Of course, you can as well begin commenting, you can as well begin tweeting. Remember, there during the third bit of the show, I'll be getting your comments through our various comment section in our platforms, Pure Africa TV. I'll be getting your comments, your viewpoints, your thoughts as far as this particular subject, or as far as this particular move is being concerned. Remember, you can as well drop your comments via our WhatsApp number. Of course, the number is 0796840560, 0796840560. I'll be getting your comments, of course, during the third bit of the show, that most participatory bit of the show. I'll be getting your comments. Of course, I'll be reading some of the comments, going through various comment section, of course, as far as that particular subject is being concerned. And moving forward to the next story, of course, that which is also given weight today in the breakfast show, we see President Uhuru Kenyatta now urging, President Uhuru Kenyatta urges DRC to focus on economic growth and end the ongoing conflict. Remember, there has been an ongoing conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo that which has shown detrimental effects, especially as far as the economic growth of that particular country is being concerned. It has detrimentally affected the economic growth of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Is the that particular country who that recently joined the bloc, of course, chaired by President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. And so we saw President Kenyatta react to this particular issue, of course, directing his speech to the Democratic Republic of Congo, of course, as far as this ongoing internal conflict. Remember, this is an internal conflict that happens just between the Congolese themselves, brother and brother conflict, sister and sister conflict within the Democratic Republic of Congo, that which is likely to jeopardize the economic growth in that particular country. Of course, we saw President Kenyatta now speaking as the chairman of East Africa Community Regional Trading Bloc. Of course, DRC joined the bloc last month, and so DRC is just 1 month old in that particular trading bloc. Of course, the East Africa community. Of course, we saw Kenyatta saying that Kenya would help to rebuild Democratic Republic of Congo economic potential, but on the same but at the same time, they should focus. The DRC should focus on reviving their economy at the expense of focusing on the internal conflicts among themselves. That's another story that is given away today in the top news story section of the breakfast show. Of course, we see the issue of 2/3 gender role be considered. IEBC is another story that is given weight today. 2/3 gender role to be considered. Remember, this is a statement that was, of course, released yesterday by the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission, of course, led by the chairman for IEBC, Wafula Chebukati. Remember, this is coming just the day that nomination of the day, that presentation of the names of the nominees to the IEBC by various political parties came to an end yesterday, of course. Remember, the IEBC will be now going through those names, or going through that particular list that has been presented to them, of course, from various political. The 2/3 gender role has been considered. Remember, there is also should it not be considered? Should the 2/3 gender rule not be considered by any political party, of course, going by the list that has been presented through the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, then that particular list is likely to be rejected. And of course, that was according to Wafula Chebukati, who is the chairperson, who is the chairman for IEBC. Of course, we saw the list presented by political parties to IEBC. If not gender balanced, then it will not succeed. It will rather be rejected, because that was according to the IEBC chairman, Wafula Chebukati. And moving on to the next story, of course, this policy, we see Tim Wanyonyi term again. Remember, Tim Wanyonyi had earlier on shown his interest for the Nairobi City gubernatorial race. But lately, after not succeeding in the nominations and the party primaries, we see him now getting back to the Westlands to contest to go for the Westland, or to contest again for the Westland as a Westlands member of Parliament seat. Of course, we've seen he had shown interest for Nairobi gubernatorial seat and an ODM ticket. But later, after the ODM party primaries were conducted in that for that political position, of course, Nairobi gubernatorial seat, and of course, the team Wanyonyi lost the ticket to Polycarp Igathe. Remember, Polycarp Igathe of Jubilee Party. See the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition flag bearer Raila Amolo Odinga, of course, giving the ticket to Polycarp Igathe after very long consultations, of course, very productive consultations between ODM party and the Jubilee party. Of course, this was done after an agreement, after such consultations. And of course, we saw Polycarp Igathe receiving the ticket for the ODM party, not just ODM party, but not for Jubilee party, but for the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition. Of course, this was declared by the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition flag bearer Raila Amolo Odinga. Then remember, Igathe is to face Sakaja, of course, Johnson Sakaja of UDA, in a very stiff competition for the Nairobi City gubernatorial race, of course, for the Nairobi City gubernatorial race. Then again, on the same note, we see Governor Anne Kananu now stepping down. Governor Anne Kananu now stepping down for the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition flag bearer for Nairobi gubernatorial seat, Polycarp Igathe. Governor Anne Kananu has stepped down and saying that has stepped down from the race and has agreed and of course announced publicly that she will support Polycarp Igathe fully in that particular race, and of course urging some of his supporters who had of course planned to vote for her now to channel their votes to Igathe when that particular time will come. Of course, just some 3 months ahead, or some 3 months ahead, will be there to general elections, of course, 9th August 2022. Remember, these are some of the stories that were given away today in the top news stories or top stories section in this particular show, because this is a breakfast show live from Pure Africa TV. My name is Evans Odhiambo. Continue staying with me. Remember, you can as well drop your comments as far as these stories are concerned. Of course, you can as well drop your comments in our various comment section platforms. Remember, you are following us through our social media platforms. Remember, our fan page, Facebook is Pure Africa TV, Instagram is Pure Africa TV, YouTube is Pure Africa TV, Twitter Pure Africa TV, hashtag is the breakfast show. Hashtag is the breakfast show. You remember, you as well. You can drop your comments through the comment section in the Pure Africa TV official app. Remember, this is a very special application for the Pure Africa TV. Just get there. You not having that particular application, of course, the steps, the procedure to having it is very simple. You have your Android smartphone, of course, get to your Google Play Store, App Store, then type there PATV app. There you'll be good to go, having our Pure Africa TV official app and having that particular application. Of course, there's a comment section there. You can as well drop your comment, not just commenting. Remember, having that particular app will also let you be at a position of getting all the latest trends and the latest information notifications, of course, both from Pure Africa TV and at the same time from Pure Africa Radio. Remember, we are getting feedback from the various consumers of this particular application, saying that it is such a wonderful platform. Of course, they are able to get all that we deliver right live from Pure Africa TV in the real time, and so do not be left out to be at par with others just by having your Pure Africa TV official app, and there you'll be good to go. Continue staying with me. I'm taking a very short break, but coming next, remember, we will now be getting to the newspapers, of course, to review some of the newspapers, of course, to see those particular stories that are unfolding as far as various sections are being concerned. Remember, we'll be looking at the politics section, we'll be looking at the business section, of course. We'll also be looking at the county section, whereby we'll be looking at some of the stories, those that are transpiring from various county levels and from sub-counties level, as well from the local levels. Remember, Pure Africa TV is the destination of your choice for local information, not just local information, but as well as local entertainment and local international entertainment. And so you need international entertainment, you are in the right place. You need the local entertainment, you are in the right place. You need international information, here we are to deliver it to you in the real time. You need the local information as well, you'll get it to the fullest. And so continue staying with me. I'm taking a very short break. Coming next, we'll be getting to the newspaper review. Of course, we have the Star newspaper, we have the Daily Nation, we have the Standard. Do not miss. Continue staying with me. My name is Evans Odhiambo. This is the Breakfast Show, live from Pure Africa TV. In a short while, I'll be back with much more. Breakfast Show live from Pure Africa TV, Pure Africa Radio. My name is Evans Odhiambo. Remember, we're in the second beat of this particular show. And so now we are getting to the newspaper review. Of course, we have the Star newspaper. And looking at the Star newspaper, of course, in the front page, you see how Mount Kenya Mafia caused Kibaki to betray Raila. That's a story that has been covered, of course, in the front page. Also, former Vice President Mudi Awori, of course, also mentioned. Of course, there's a story that we'll get to look at it into details. And, of course, some of the stories, we are giving the highlights, but soon we'll get back to dig deep into them. And moving them on to the next story, of course, we see the life and times of President Mwai Kibaki. Life and times of President Mwai Kibaki. Remember, today is that particular day when there's a state ceremony, of course, the last, the burial ceremony conducted in honor of the late President Mwai Kibaki. And actually the ceremony was to kick off at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning, and that to mean that it is already going on. Remember, there are quite a good number, there's quite a good number of heads of states, of course, from other outside the countries, heads of state from other outside the countries that had promised or that had confirmed their presence, that they will actually get to reach to that particular scene, of course, the Nyayo Stadium, also to pay their last respect for the late President Mwai Kibaki. Among them are the Cyril Ramaphosa, of course, of South Africa, then Salva Kiir of South Sudan, and Zewde of Ethiopia, among other state dignitaries, of course, from other states. We also expect a good number of dignitaries from the neighboring country of Tanzania, of course, to attend that particular burial service. But now let's look at the life and times of President Mwai Kibaki, also captured and given a lot of emphasis in this particular section. Of course, Kibaki has been seen to be such a decent leader, of course, who is committed to the public service at the expense of self. He actually said that he's not throughout his life, he was not self-centered. He was centered at the interest of the public, of course, to serve the nation, to serve the public. And of course, looking at it briefly, realized that the issue of free primary education is that which is not left out as far as the achievements of the late President Mwai Kibaki is being mentioned. Yet again, infrastructural development also mentioned again. Of course, remember the other day by the legislatures in the National Assembly, of course, giving some of the attributes. So the issue of road constructions, infrastructure, free primary education, or general education, of course, is one achievement that is being that can be mentioned over and over again as far as President Mwai Kibaki. So the late President Mwai Kibaki's achievements are being mentioned. And moving forward to the next story, of course, we see IEBC, a political party, is headed for clash in the gender rule. Remember, this particular story was also covered in the top news stories that we had today for the breakfast show. Of course, now we see the issue of a total gender rule to be considered, of the gender balance to be considered, of course, by the IEBC. Remember, this is a statement that was made by IEBC chairperson or IEBC chairman Wafula Chebukati, saying that the list that is presented to them as IEBC, or the list that is presented to them as IEBC from various political parties, they look at that particular list just to see when it is gender balanced and the two-thirds gender rule is considered. Of course, if it fails to get that particular consideration, or if two-thirds gender rule is not considered, then it is likely to be rejected, and of course it is likely not to proceed, as it will face rejection immediately. And so is something that is causing headache, especially for various political parties, causing a lot of headache for various political parties here, uh, because should it not, get to those set standards, especially as far as this particular gender role is being concerned, then it is likely to be rejected, not likely to be rejected, but it is going to be rejected, of course, as a condition that has been set by the IEBC, Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. And moving forward to the next story, of course, captured under this particular section, we see Kenya brave chilly weather to attend Kibaki's state service. Of course, this happening today. This is happening today at the Nyayo Sports Ground or Nyayo Stadium. Because we see members of the public have started arriving at the Nyayo National Stadium in readiness for the state funeral of the late President Emilio Mwai Kibaki. Of course, the public is being subjected to the strict security screening before being allowed into that particular stadium, because they are not being allowed to enter the avenue with food items. Also, getting there with the food items or any other bottled liquids like water or juice is prohibited. Just get there when you don't have such commodities. Of course, there's a very tough, staff security currently, even as we speak. The publics also continue getting, but there's a very tight security right there. Of course, not getting there with other drinks, with drinks and other commodities. There's a serious screening there. Of course, we see those carrying food, water, or juice are being told to eat, drink, or leave the items outside before getting to that particular stadium, of course, the Nyayo Stadium. That's how the service is continuing, although that is what is transpiring live from the Nyayo Stadium. Remember, we'll also be briefing you as time goes, whatever event, whatever thing that will be unfolding from that particular stadium, we'll be letting you know right in time. Then as we continue with the show, Moving forward to the next story, of course, we now see the DPP to pursue administrative ways to block aspirants, or to block some of the aspirants. Of course, this is a story that is also captured there. But now let's look at it to see or to get the details of the whole story. Of course, we see the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nurdin Haji, now wants vetting of political candidates to involve administrative ways to block those with pending corruption cases. This is a story that is also captured there. Of course, we see we saw Haji yesterday or Thursday expressing his frustration with the country's justice system that enables technicalities to be exploited by corrupt politicians to evade accountability. Remember, this is also an issue that has been very controversial. Of course, we've seen other politicians, of course, with the pending cases, saying that it is the IBC to decide their fate, not the judicial service, not really judiciary, not really the court orders, but IEBC. And so it is a very contentious motion, is such a debatable motion. But now we see the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nurdin Haji, also reacting to the same. Of course, he decided that the fact that he of course decided that despite some senior politicians, including governors, facing serious economic crime cases, they are allowed to access their offices, and and of course hence compromises some of the cases. Of course, we see Haji speaking, or Haji spoke when he took Commonwealth Secretary General Patricia Scott on a tour of the Prosecution Training Institute in Loresho in Nairobi, of course, that was yesterday. Meanwhile, the Electoral Agency IEBC has cited a 213 court ruling that allowed President Uhuru Kenyatta and his Deputy President William Ruto to vie for the presidency while facing the crimes against humanity cases at the Hague-based International Crime Court. Bataji said the legal route notwithstanding, the agency's vetting political candidates should exercise administrative direction to block the tainted candidates. And so you realize that these are very contentious motions, such a debatable issue. Of course, some of the politicians with the pending cases, I know, they're beginning to relate it to the cases of the President Uhuru Kenyatta, of course, and his deputy William Ruto. Remember the Hague, of course, that's a story that is given coverage under this particular section. And moving forward, we see now President Uhuru Kenyatta gives political godfather Kibaki a very lavish send-off. That's also mentioned in this particular section. Remember, those are some of the stories that are captured under this particular section. Of course, that has been the business section. Meanwhile, you can continue dropping your comments, of course, dropping your comments via our various comment section. Remember, you following via social media platforms. Our fan page, Facebook is Pure Africa TV, Instagram Pure Africa TV, Twitter, you can tweet at Pure Africa TV. Remember, the hashtag is the breakfast show, because I'll be getting your tweets in the real time. Remember, you can as well drop your comments via the comment section at the Pure Africa TV official app, Pure Africa TV official app. Of course, I'll be getting your comments in the real time. But remember, getting to the third bit of the show today, we'll be talking about all. I'll be gathering your opinions, your ideas, your viewpoints on this particular move that has been taken by the Interior Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Fred Matiang'i. That beginning next month, some of the petty offenders will be released from the prison, from the jail, because of insufficient space in those facilities, of course, to accommodate the big number of these inmates. And so some of them will be released. Of course, approximately 5,000 of those petty offenders will be released beginning next month. Remember, this is a program that was declared, that was announced yesterday by Dr. Fred Matiang'i, and he's saying that this is a move that is taken just because the government has lacked enough, commodities in the facility, has lacked enough facilities in the prison to accommodate all those inmates. And so we'll be getting your opinions, your viewpoints, your ideas as far as this particular subject is concerned. Of course, you'll be able to share with me your feelings through our comment section. How do you feel about it? Do you feel it's a nice move, or this, or do you feel that these petty offenders are likely to be a threat once again to the society? Remember, your feelings and your viewpoints, opinions, comments, I'll be getting during the third bit of the show. Then as we get to the third bit of the show. Meanwhile, in the second bit of the show, of course, that was the political section, but soon we'll be getting to the business section. So continue staying with me. Do not miss the next section. That will be the business section. Continue staying with me. I'm taking a very short break. After a short while, I'll be back as we get to the business section. Meanwhile, continue commenting, continue tweeting, continue sharing, of course, as well. Continue dropping your comments. Remember, you can drop your comments via our WhatsApp number also, especially you following through your television screen, of course, you using the free-to-air satellite decoder. You can as well drop your comments via WhatsApp number. The number is 0796840560. There will be good to go. I'm taking a very short break. After a while, I'll be back with much more. Continue staying with me. Right, welcome back. This is the Breakfast Show live from Pure Africa TV. My name is Evans Odhiambo. Remember, we are in the second bit of this particular show, such a bit whereby we focus on politics, we focus on business. Of course, we also focus on our counties to see what is transpiring from the county level or from our various counties and sub-counties. But now let's switch gears and look at the business section. Of course, to see some of the stories that are captured under the business section. Of course, looking at it, we see the iconic Hilton Hotel to shut down after 53 years of operation. The Hilton Hotel in Nairobi has of course lasted for 53 years, but now bad news that it is to shut down even after that long period of service to various citizens. Of course, now we see the iconic City Hotel. The Hilton will close its doors indefinitely in December after operating for over 5 decades in the heart of Kenya's central business district. Of course, as a result, it will lay off an unspecified number of workers, and lining the troubles of hotels in the wake of the COVID-19 travel slump and other factors beyond the pandemic. Of course, we see the renowned hotel, which has 40.57% shares owned by the government, said, of course, on Wednesday it will not quit Kenya and will continue to operate in other brands in the country. Of course, some of the staff that will face the layoff will, of course, get to other branches to continue working in other branches. Meanwhile, others will also be rendered jobless as a result of that, and that is a bad news, of course, captured. And that. And moving forward to the next story, now see state warns against fuel diversion as another crisis looms. Remember, this also was covered during the top news stories, whereby we saw big companies now begin to sell just an effort to sell to other small companies, just an effort to counteract the fuel shortage. But now the state warns against fuel diversion as a fresh crisis and now looms. Of course, the shortage of fuel, which had slightly eased in various parts of the country, could hit previous levels due to insufficient local stocks in the market. Major oil companies and independent dealers are now being accused of exporting more than their set quotas to the neighboring countries. Remember, this particular allegation made now the big companies to begin selling to other small companies who will in effect sell to various transport dealers, of course, just to see that fuel distribution is even across the country in various counties and our sub-counties, that the shortage should not loom again. Of course, that's a story that is also captured here under the business section. Then we see IMF now allows Kenya's plan to list tender beneficiaries. Of course, this is the International Monetary Fund. Of course, in the end of mission press statement, the international lender said that this is a step in the country's effort. This is a positive move, of course, by the country, of course, lauded by the International Monetary Fund, or simply the IMF. Of course, we see the International Monetary Fund has now lauded Kenya's plan to list beneficial ownership information of successful bidders in government tenders. Of course, in the end of a mission press statement, the international lender said this is a step in the country's effort to combat rampant corruption. So according to the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, that is such a positive step that is addition, that is a plus towards the fight of the corruption, especially in Kenya. Then we see Kenya now banning used bus imports, control trucks in new rule. Of course, there's another story that is given coverage under the business section. Of course, we see now import or export of used buses to Kenya from the first day of July has been banned in the last move by the government to protect and promote local assemblers. Of course, this comes amid tax incentives announced by the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukunu Yatani in the 2022-2023 financial vehicle industry. Because the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics (KEBS) also plans to ban importation of all types. We see the Kenya National Bureau of Standards are now planning to ban importation of all types of passenger minibus used in the country's thriving matatu industry. Of course, this particular move will be effective as from first day of the month of July, of course, this year, 2000, and of course, being given a coverage here under the county section, under the business section, under the business section. Then we see April inflation now to hit 6.47%. High food prices. Kenya National Bureau of Standards data, of course, KNBS also has captured that. Let's look at the story now. Of course, we see high cost of commodities pushed Kenya's April inflation to extraordinary 6.47%, according to the latest official data. Of course, inflation as measured by the Consumer Price Index (CPI) was recorded at a lower rate of 5.56% in the previous month. Of course, in the last 30 days, the prices of potatoes, packet milk, and wheat flour white increased by 10.18, 6.29, and 6.12% respectively. Of course, this is true. Looking at it, you realize that the prices of food and other essential commodities have also increased significantly. Of course, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics data now shows the rise was mainly due to increase in the price of food and non-alcoholic beverages, which went up by 12.15%. Remember, those are some of the stories that were given coverage under this particular section, of course, the business section. But now let's switch gears and look at the county section, because those particular stories that are also given coverage, those stories that are transpiring as far as our various county levels, are being concerned. Of course, topping, we see Murang'a County at the top. Murang'a coffee farmers hail Kibaki for reviving sector, because those that have been benefiting from the Murang'a coffee farms, or those Murang'a coffee farmers, have really appreciated President Mwai Kibaki even during this time that the country is mourning. The country is paying the last respect for the former president, or for the third president of Kenya, of the Republic of Kenya, the late President Mwai Kibaki. You see the Murang'a coffee farmers now hailing Kibaki for reviving the coffee sector in Murang'a County. And moving forward to the next story, of course, covered under this county section, we see now Kilonzo secures orders against Wiper choice of Malombe. Of course, that's also captured under the county's section. Of course, we see the Wiper Democratic Movement was on Wednesday temporarily stopped from pressing the name of Julius Malombe to the IEBC as the Kitui governor aspirant. Justice Seven Lungunya of the political party dispute tribunal gave his interim injunction pending the inter-party hearing on an application in which Kiana Kilonzo changed the Malombe's nomination. Of course, also captured in that particular bit, of course, the county's section. But you realize that nominations and party primaries, of course, for this particular time, or even as they came to an end, but they were, of course, accompanied with a lot of violence, accompanied with a lot of controversy, of course, with a lot of chaos. They were very chaotic. Not left out is this particular incident. And moving forward to the next story, now we see Kianda urges aspirants to uphold peace in honor of Kibaki. That's a very special information, or a very special message sent to the aspirants. Of course, political aspirants have been urged to uphold peace during and after polls in honor of former President Mwai Kibaki, especially during this time that the country is mourning the death of President Kibaki, also paying the last respect for the third president of the Republic of Kenya, who is now the late Northeastern Region Commissioner James Kianda said the leaders now should not use campaigns as a tool to divide Kenyans. Rather, the commissioner spoke and said that this is the time that the country should remain united, and of course the peace should be, this is the time for embracing peace, unity, brotherhood, not a time for divisive politics. Of course, that is according to this particular commissioner. Those are some of the stories, of course, that are captured under this particular section. Of course, we also see UDA nomination losers to contest as independent candidates also captured in this particular. Of course, that is the only move, of course, going by or considering the guidelines that were given by the Registrar of Political Parties and the RITU, that once you lose in nominations, you have just two options. You only have two options, either to support that particular individual or that particular colleague that you've lost to, or rather stand as an independent candidate. Of course, we see others are embracing the move to stand as independent candidates in the UDA, ODM, and other political parties, of course. Now to UDA, we see now Baringo aspirants who lost in the United Democratic Alliance Party primaries are now seeking to contest as independent aspirants in the August 9 polls, because we see Governor Stanley Kiptis is the latest Deputy President William Ruto's ally to make his declaration of going as an independent candidate. Of course, Kiptis emerged third with 25,976 votes in the hotly contested nomination on the 14th day of April. His predecessor, Benjamin Cheboi, won with 45,666. And so you can see that margin. Then we also saw Eldama Ravine MP Moses Lesonet, who was also a second. The primaries also joined independent aspirants convoy on Wednesday. And so that's a move by some of the contestants, of course, deciding now to stand and go as independent candidates to face their opponents on ballot, or to face those that managed to get the favor of the nomination, or to get the favor of that particular party's primaries, now to face them in the ballot come 9th of August, of course, the year is 2022, just some few months ahead. And there they will be. Of course, it's you as the Kenyan citizen to decide their fate. How will you decide their fate? Of course, through voting. Through voting, you'll decide their fate. Of course, deciding who to remain, or to who to get to that particular public office. Of course, you get to decide who to get to that particular office. Remember, those are some of the stories that were given coverage under the county section. But now we are getting to the third bit of the show, and remember today, getting to the third bit of the show, we are asking your my question is simple, just to get your reactions, your viewpoints, your opinions as far as this particular move is being concerned. Of course, the move by the cabinet minister for Cabinet Minister for Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i, his declaration that beginning next month some of the petty offenders will be released. But what do you think about it? What is your feeling about it? Of course, this particular move, according to CS Matiang'i, is that the government has no enough space in the facility, of course, to accommodate or that big number of inmates. Also, move to free some of the space, especially by leaving or by releasing some of the petty offenders. Remember, there are those who are held there behind the bars just because they have been defeated to pay even as little fine as for 600 Kenya shillings, and so they have to serve their jail terms. But now time has come to avoid that particular overcrowding in such facilities, and so a move by the Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i to release those that are regarded as petty offenders, and approximately 5,000 of them will be released. But what do you think about it? What is your reaction? What is your opinion about that particular move? Of course, that's something that we are talking about even as we get to the third bit of the show. Meanwhile, you can as well share with us if you've actually attended to the Nyayo Stadium funeral service. Of course, the state funeral service for the late president, now President Mwai Kibaki, President Emilio Mwai Kibaki. You can as well share with us. Meanwhile, we will continue to brief you on the event in the Nyayo Stadium, of course, even as the event unfolds. Of course, remember, the service is ongoing, and of course, some of the state officers from other counties, from other countries have also confirmed their arrival, that soon they'll get to that particular location or to get to that particular stadium to join Kenya in mourning the death of President Mwai Kibaki, and of course paying their last respect. Remember, you not getting a chance to get to that particular stadium, of course, we join the country in mourning and paying the last respect during that particular state service. You can as well get the condolences books, of course, from the county, from your particular county. Of course, they are distributed all over in state offices at various county levels, at the county levels. Let me take a very short break. Coming after, I'll be getting your comments, of course, reading your comments, then as we come to the closure of the breakfast show. Of course, I'll be getting your comments pertaining to the decision, of course, by the Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i, especially based on this particular plan or program that beginning next month, some of the inmates, so especially those that are regarded as the petty offenders, will be released because of or as an effort to avoid overcrowding in the jails, in the jails, of course. Also considering the fact that the government has no enough facilities to accommodate all those inmates. Of course, 5,000 of them, 5,000 to approximately 5,000 to be released as far as that directive is concerned. I'm taking a very short break. Coming later, I'll be gathering your comments. They are, of course, going through various comment sections for various platforms, of course, before we call it a breakfast show. Continue staying with me. I'm taking a very short break. I'll be back as we continue. Stay tuned. show. Welcome back to the third and the very last bit of this particular show. Of course, this is the breakfast show live from Pure Africa TV, Pure Africa Radio. My name is Evans Odhiamba. Now I want to go through the comment section, of course, to look at some of the comments or to read a few comments before we can finally call it a breakfast show, of course, due to time. Of course, I'll be getting your comments on or what is your opinion on the release of the petty offenders. Of course, this is a declaration of this is a statement that was issued by by the Interior Cabinet Secretary or Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i yesterday, of course, saying that due to insufficient facility for the accommodation, some of the petty offenders will be released beginning next month. Of course, beginning next month. Of course, approximate number of those to be released is 5,000, approximately 5,000. But what are your reaction to this? What are your feelings to this particular move, of course, by the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, Dr. Fred Matiang'i? Looking at the comment section, of course, I see that's Kevin Otieno. Kevin Otieno saying, no, they are a threat to the community. They are a threat to the community. They should not be left. And moving forward, of course, that's Lucy from Taita Taveta saying that's a good move. That's a better suggestion. And finally, looking at this other section, of course, from the PATV app, I see that's Ronald saying that those people should not be released. They are a threat to the community. Of course, those are some of the comments, or those are some of the few reactions, of course, by the viewers and by the viewers for this particular program, especially during this particular bit, the third bit of the show, such a participatory bit of the show. Of course, due to time, we'll now call it a breakfast show. Thank you very much for staying with me since we began the first bit of the show, our second bit, and finally we've come to the third and the last bit of this particular show. Remember, we'll continue to let you know whatever is unfolding, whatever is transpiring at the Nyayo Stadium, especially during this particular state service, of course, in honor of the late President Mwai Kibaki, ahead of his burial tomorrow. Of course, he will be offered a state burial tomorrow. Remember, we'll be giving you all this information even as they transpire, even as they unfold in the real time. We'll be giving you information even in our subsequent shows. And so, continue staying with us, continue staying tuned to Pure Africa TV. This is the destination of your choice for local and international information, international news and non-national news, of course, as well as local and international entertainment. Thank you for staying with me in the breakfast show. My name is Evans Odhiamba. Remember to join me again tomorrow exactly at 7 o'clock in the morning. Remember to join me exactly at 7. All right, sorry, but today is Friday. And so sorry for that. But join me on Monday. Of course. I'll take this opportunity now to wish you the best weekend, the best of luck during the weekend. Enjoy your weekend. Let's meet again on Monday exactly at 7 o'clock in the morning. Bye for now, and remember to stay safe.